493. Let's get right to it. Joe Rogan, Jim Gaffigan, Joe Rogan, Dave Smith. I got two clips, and as I was listening to the first clip, which is going to be Joe and Jim Gaffigan, it made me think of another clip that I've seen between Joe and Dave Smith. And my question to you, as I play these two clips, I want you to keep this in mind, is it possible that woke culture and the distraction machine that we have all around us was possibly not something that just erected because of social media and all the information that we have access to now, but was strategically placed in front of us? You know, if you look at woke culture, it's very distracting, even if you don't consider yourself woke, right? I don't know. And then to the people who fall under that, very distracting for them as well. They have this focus on race and gender and all these different things. They have to see the whole world that way. It's very distracting. I wonder if it could be that this was placed in front of us strategically. It didn't just happen because things weren't like this before. They weren't really like this before. Before, if you knew somebody who fell under a certain sexual preference, you just knew that about them and that was it. And they had that preference and then that was it. It wasn't something that you had to stand so firm on. It wasn't something that your life had to revolve around. Same with your politics. If you just fell under a certain way of politics, one party or the other, you kind of just were that, and the only reason you cared about that was because of what you're going to do when it comes to voting. It wasn't something that you had to fly a flag on every day. You didn't have to align yourself with people who were just like you. None of that mattered. And I just wonder when that changed. But before I get into those clips, I'm just going to bring you over to the store. This is IamCoachColin.com, and this is our newest design. It is the cricket connoisseur himself, or as I like to call him, public enemy number one. Because if you don't know, now you know. This guy right here is responsible for a lot of the things that are plaguing you today. So, also we have the certified pure blood shirt. If you've survived the biggest psychological experiment known to man, then this is a shirt for you. Get your certificate of achievement because you survived. You survived unscathed, unjabbed. Now, you can get all of those shirts and more at the I Am Coach Colin website. And if you want 10% off, here you go. I'm giving it to you right now. Put in the discount code area, I Am Coach Colin, and that gets you 10% off. Now, when you put that in, it is all capital letters. It is all one word, and there's one L in the name Colin, and that gets you 10% off. And if you've done that already on our site, thank you so much. You have no idea how much it means to us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now let's get to the first clip. Let's go.
And there is something about, I mean, I don't think there's probably people that understand this, but like this outrage machine it serves such a purpose. And I'm talking about both sides. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, fucking Trump, fucking Biden. There is this thing that like it serves something in us that is probably not healthy.
Definitely not healthy.
Right? And it's certainly not constructive. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel as though, you know, with comedians, we are so used to being around, but we're so used to being around people of different points of view and different sensibilities that we grow to love, that it's not completely foreign to, like, I remember at 4th of July, I had a friend that was like at Occupy Wall Street, and then I had a friend who works at Fox News, and they were there, and they've known each other for 30 years, and it was nothing. It was not an issue. It was interesting. I mean, I was asking them questions. You know, I'm like, all right, so what's going on here? Yeah. And but there is something. Maybe it's because comedians are misfits. Because I say that also, and I sometimes think like, sometimes people in the entertainment industry are like, you know, my business is so weird. When the reality is, in a bank, in a construction site, there's people of dramatically different opinions too, and they got to go along to get along, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Well, people like being in opposition of other people, and they like thinking that those people on that other side are keeping them from living the dream, or keeping this country from being great, or keeping people from prospering and keeping democracy alive. And if we don't defeat them, we're fucked. And they like having this like wild cause. And there's some validity to it. I mean, there's a lot of real challenging issues in this country, like real dangerous, scary issues. And there's a lot of financial interests that are tied up in these dangerous, scary issues, and they will avoid solutions because they're profiting off of the problem itself.
Wow.
There's a lot of that going on.
Yeah.
That's a lot of the homeless problem.
Yeah.
There's a lot of issues in this country that you could pick one side or another and just decide those people are the problem. It's insanely complicated. It's insanely interwoven and complex. And, to reduce it down to the right versus the left, and we're the good guys and they're the bad guys. It's like, that's such a stupid perspective, and you're being played. You're being played by the media. You're being played by politicians. It's like manufactured outrage, recreational outrage, and it's just a giant distraction. It's constantly going on. And then there's UFOs.
Yeah, why is it that the UFO thing comes up every couple months where people are like, "There's UFOs," and then like a half hour later, people are like, "Did you see the new Colts uniform?" We're so easily distracted by really unimportant things from like stuff that is the theme of every sci-fi movie, right? We're so like the aliens thing in the pandemic. They're like, well, here's the aliens info, and people are like, that's unbelievable. Did you see what Trump said to that female reporter? You know what I mean? Like, we are so easily distracted by. But I mean, I don't think it's a conspiracy necessarily. I think it's just that human beings are just like goldfish. I think we forget.
For sure.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, that's right.
We definitely are, but then there's also people that take advantage of that. And I think there's definitely calculated news releases and leaks that they put out to distract us from other complicated things that are also going on simultaneously. The fascinating thing about the UFO thing is because if this had happened in like the 1980s, it would be front page of every newspaper. Everyone would be talking about it at work. Everyone would be talking about it on the street. Like, oh my God. They had congressional hearings where they said, we've recovered multiple crashed vehicles from other planets. We have alien biological entities that are in freezers that they have right now. The government has been doing this for 80 years and keeping it secret. There's a crash retrieval program. There's a back engineering program. This is all in the congressional hearings yesterday. And everybody's like, yeah, whatever.
But very true. See, it's very, very interesting. When you hear Joe talk about that, what I really like, just to veer away from that for a second, like Jim Gaffigan is like, I don't think there's a conspiracy, and he's just kind of, going along with mainstream media and just like stories are what they are. And then Joe kind of just like injects into him like, this is actually what happens. Have you ever had a friend like that where your friend is like not on board with those things or just doesn't even know about them? And then every once in a while, you just hit them with like, hey, man, MK Ultra's a real thing? And you know what they did? And they were given, and they're just like, what? No, that's not really. No, that would be, there would be record of that. There is. You can go on the government website and see it. And you're like, huh? That's almost like what it's like. I would love to see a podcast with Jim Gaffigan and Joe Rogan, like a weekly podcast where Joe just harasses him with all this conspiracy stuff that he's picked up from Alex Jones and Eddie Bravo and just all sorts of spaces, David Icke, Russell Brand, just everything. I wonder if Jim, like, it's really interesting to think about somebody's life. Like, does Jim Gaffigan know about the World Economic Forum? Like, does he know that's a thing? Does he know about Klaus Schwab? Like, I wonder. He probably doesn't. He probably has no idea that there's some guy who's like, we've penetrated the cabinets of all the governments. He probably has no idea. It's almost like that's like how my in-laws are, like they're older, they're in their, late 60s and they just don't know about that stuff. And if you tell them, they're just like, they just shake their head. They're just like, let's just eat, it's like too much for their mind. I love seeing it. But yeah, let's get into this Dave Smith clip real quick. And think about what I said at the beginning. If it could be something that was put upon us strategically, this whole woke movement, you know, the identity politics, Dave Smith says some interesting things here. Just think about that. Let's go.
The George W. Bush administration, the wars and the financial crisis really set into motion like a bad, dangerous thing where it almost like I think there was like an effort to distract away from I think there were powerful people who wanted to distract away from how much the powerful people had fucked over the country. And then there was kind of like this effort to pit people against each other. And then I think it was very easy for people to fall into that and just get very, very tribal and very, very isolated. I also think there was like this knee-jerk reaction from journalists to not confront their own obvious failure. Like, in that they hadn't really been reporting on the things that actually, you know what I mean? Like, imagine there was this like ticking time bomb, like the subprime mortgage, crisis, and you were just oblivious to it.
Right.
And you've been reporting on all these stories, and you weren't reporting on the time bomb that was about to blow up on the working class in America. So now what do you report on? Racism, you know, it's the problem is that this other guy is lying to you, and when Trump got elected, which I think very much was a reaction to a lot of that stuff, I think that then it was like that's when it really all fell apart because the media it was so obvious that this guy who you were telling everyone, well, this guy can't possibly win and no one cares about what he has to say, and then tens of millions of people did care about what he had to say and voted for him. It was like their failure was that much more exposed. And so they just had to snap into like other explanations for what happened here. No, it's not that we failed on the job for 30 years. It's that Russia and racism and misinformation and like all of this stuff. But I do think in a lot of ways it was a concerted effort. You ever see that that cartoon, which it's like a banker in like his corner office, and outside his window is all the Occupy Wall Street people protesting, and he's on the phone and he says, "Introduce them to identity politics." You know, like I'm not saying I don't know if it went down exactly that way, but I think that cartoon's getting at something. Like I think there's a reason. I just don't.
Do you think the government is that competent that they could brilliantly socially engineer civilization that way?
I think a lot of the private interests that own our government are pretty competent, actually. You know, I think the government works in very sloppy ways, but if you look at it from the perspective of, say, like, you know, Lockheed Martin and Pfizer and companies making, you know, hundreds of billions of dollars in profits, they're actually working very well. You know, like the system's working very well toward that end. And I just don't think it was completely organic that after we had these disastrous wars and a financial crisis, and after you had the Tea Party and the Occupy Wall Street movement, that all of a sudden on some grassroots level, we were like, we need to have a national conversation about chicks with dicks. Yeah. Like, I don't think that just happened. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that's like every day that's what we got to talk about now. That's the new thing.
What is the gentleman's
beautiful
name from
trans
Russia?
women. I'm sorry.
The trans, the Russian guy who used to work for the KGB, Yuri.
Yes, I know you're talking about.
What is his last name? Jamie Bentonov.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. Who gave the like lectures on how the Soviet Union was destroying America in the next generation?
And he talked about this in 1984. Mm-hmm. This was during the Soviet Union time. Yuri Bezmenov.
Yep, that's him.
Yuri Bezmenov gave a speech describing exactly America in 2023, describing how Russia had eroded, the Soviet Union had eroded all of our institutions and gotten in there and implanted ideas of Marxism and reinforced these ideas, and that this was undoubtedly going to lead to the demise of America. There's but the way he lays it out,
it's compelling, and there's definitely a lot of things that kind of happened exactly like he said they would happen.
Yeah.
And it's not, you know, it's kind of evolved. It's not really like traditional Marxism is kind of dead. No one's really advocating for like government ownership of the means of production. It's more now, it's just kind of like, it's really like corporate control of government, with this weird, like what they call cultural Marxism, which I don't like the term because it means different things to so many different people. But the idea that like Marx had this economic view that everything, all of human history was a class struggle between like the oppressor class and the oppressed class. And if you like applied that to cultural issues, it's like describes wokeism to a T.
Yeah.
That everything can be reduced to like white, black, straight, gay, cis, trans, men, women. Like it's like everything is like the oppressor class versus the oppressed.
Yes.
Which is such a shallow, stupid way of analyzing anything. It's there's so much more to reality than that simplistic way of looking at things.
But it's so
Yes. Right? I don't know. This is very interesting, especially when he brings up the point of Yuri Benzanov, I believe that is his name. I even did a video on this gentleman and the things that he was walking through. I think he was the one that was talking about destabilization, demoralization, and then there's like 2 other stages as well. And it just makes me wonder because, you know, when they're having that conversation, Dave Smith and Joe, there's talk of how right now everything, like these companies making hundreds of billions of dollars, everything's working in their interest. Well, then if that's true, because if Russia was the one to do this, let's just say they're the ones to implant Wokism into the country, right? Into the whole of all of the West. If they're the ones to do it, why would it benefit any of the companies in North America? Wouldn't it be something that would help erode those companies? You know, like those companies are doing really well. You know, it's almost like I just want to say like maybe they're the ones that did it. Because if Russia did it, Russia's going to go for everybody. Everybody gets fucked. You know, not just the working class people and that's it. You know, Russia wants everything. Russia wants the economy to collapse. It wants the whole country weak. It doesn't want this super elite class of people still strong and wealthy and making money hand over fist. It doesn't want that. So, you know, anytime something happens, you have to think about who is benefiting. So if there's still companies, you know, as the West erodes, as it is with wokeism and everything, you know, the companies aren't. They're not eroding. You know, I don't know. I'm just it makes you think. Like definitely seems like this was implanted or strategically brought about. You know, through years of, you know, not just Black Lives Matter, but like different social justice type of things. Even the term social justice. You didn't hear all that much. Social justice warrior. You didn't hear all that 12 years ago. It wasn't a term 15 years ago. You never heard anybody say that 10 years ago. You didn't really hear that. But the past like 8, 5, 4 years, you hear that quite a bit. And it's toted by people who are for that type of behavior and against that type of behavior. It's really something. It just makes me want. You always have to wonder who's pulling the strings. You know, who's actually doing these things. And you can just assume like, oh, it's the Rockefellers and Rothschilds and the Schwabs and it's all, you know, the Gates, and like you can always say that, but yeah, it's just very interesting because wokeism, again, you and I, let's say we're not woke. I'm definitely not a part of that. You're not a part of that. So it doesn't affect us that much. It does. It's uncomfortable. There's certain things that are happening in schools and it's annoying and certain aspects of it are like, just leave us alone. But the people who it affects the most are the people who are actually in it, the people who believe in it, the people who perpetuate it, the people that push it. Like it's hurting them way more because now their whole life has to be about that. What they do, who they talk to. And I just wonder if like that's you know how there's waves of feminism? I wonder if there's waves of wokeism. And the first wave affects the people who are a part of it. And maybe the second wave affects people that are not a part of it. And that's what we're starting to see as it starts penetrating into schools and, you know, certain things are happening with kids and certain things are being shown to kids and, we're all deeming it as inappropriate, but that first wave of wokeism, they're completely on board with it. It just kind of makes you wonder. I don't know. I'm just having a thought process episode, I wonder. Let me know in the comments what you think. If it was something that was injected into the society, and then who could be responsible for that? Because I guess going back to the theory of Russia, you would want it to seem like something that was coming from the highest ups of your country. That's how you'd want to see it, because then that would make the working class battle the elite class and not look for anybody else, look to another country being responsible. I don't know. Let me know. Let me know in the comments what you think. Like the episode if you have not already. Subscribe if you have not already, because we're doing 1 to 3 episodes a day. Who else is doing that? I don't know many. This is episode 493, Soul Not For Sale podcast. Other than that, I am out. Think about it. Comment.